I have been closely following the news about the war in Ukraine. Meron akong napanood ng isang video about a young adult male. Nakatira siya sa Ukraine, pero ang parents niya ay nasa Russia. That's not unusual because marami ding Russians sa Ukraine. Well, nasurpresa daw siya when he finally got a telephone call, a call from his father who was living in in Russia. Parang napaka-casual ng tatay niya na para bang wala namang nangyayaring gulo sa Ukraine. And so when the young man told his father that he and his wife and his child, his son, were hiding inside a bomb shelter and that he was not sure kung hindi pa wasak yung bahay nila after so many bombings, nag-react daw yung father niya. He said, "What are you talking about? Bakit ka nagtatago sa bombing shelter? Yung last news na narinig ko dito sa Russia, malapit nang matapos yung special operation dyan sa Ukraine. Malapit nang ma-liberate yung Ukraine. At yung neo-Nazi government daw was about to surrender." Hindi makapaniwala yung anak. He could not believe what his father was saying to him. He tried to explain to his father that what was going on was a war, giyera. Hindi siya basta lang special military operation. And that Russia was actually invading Ukraine, bombing the cities, and killing a lot of civilians. And his father's reply was, "Don't believe that. Huwag kang maniniwala sa ganyan. Propaganda lang yan. That is the propaganda of the fascists. That is not true," sabi daw. And so the son tried and tried to explain. Pero ayaw talagang makinig nung tatay niya. His father simply would not believe him and would not even listen to him. He seemed totally convinced about the news that he was getting inside Russia. Kaya nag-post siya sa Facebook. At ang pinost niya sa Facebook ay ganito, "My father who lives in Russia does not believe me that Russia has declared a war, has invaded Ukraine." Maya-maya daw, pasukan na yung mga comments from other Russians living in Ukraine. At sinasabi din nila, my own parents in Russia said the same thing to me. And they just would not believe my version of the story. And within a few hours, he already had more than 1,000 other people saying exactly the same thing. What is the point? You see, kung minsan, people simply believe what they choose to believe. Sometimes people just choose to believe or simply believe what they choose to believe. And you cannot even argue with them. Nothing that you can say can convince them that you are telling the truth. They have made up their minds. Well, today's first reading from the book of the prophet Ezekiel is talking about changing one's mind. Whether you're changing for good or for evil. How changing one's mind for good can save thou even the most wicked sinner and how changing one's mind for evil can lead to your doom, your destruction, even if you have been good most of your life. Nakakatakot, these words from the prophet. In the gospel, Jesus is reflecting on one of the 10 commandments. Commandment number 5. O ano ba ang 5th commandment? Huwag kang papatay. Thou shalt not kill. And Jesus says, well, yun yung narinig natin sa batas. But I say to you, you should not allow your soul to be poisoned by anger. Jesus is explaining to us that it is not just the killer who is liable to judgment, but the one who has allowed his soul to be poisoned by hatred or to be poisoned by resentment. Hitler did not begin the murder of the millions of Jewish people when he actually put them inside the gas chambers and later incinerated them. Sinunog niya. No, it didn't start there. He started it by planting the seeds of hatred and resentment in the hearts of the German people against the Jewish people, so that the Germans would not care when he actually ordered the genocide, or so that they would choose not to believe when the massacre was already being committed. Propaganda lang yan, hindi totoo yan. Biro mo, millions na yung pinapatay, sasabihin pa nila, hindi totoo yan, propaganda lang yan. Sometimes people can be blind, spiritually blind. And the main point of Jesus is that yung murder, physical murder, almost always is preceded by spiritual murder. Kaya yung title ng homily na ito spiritual murder. Spiritual murder. Killing does not begin when somebody sticks a knife into somebody else's body. No. It begins in the heart. And so, in the same way, kung gusto natin ng peace and reconciliation, there is no way we can achieve it without addressing the very root causes of conflict and violence. Namely, the poisoning of the minds. Kung minsan yung ginagamit pa yung pa-victim mentality, the sense of victimhood. At yung iba, gustong-gusto nila yung pa-victim mentality. So that, people at some point believe that they are under attack, that they're being persecuted. And then they react violently, and they say it is justified because it is only for their self-preservation or self-defense. Kung minsan mas madali pang i-save yung ibang tao sa kapwa-tao nila kesa yung i-save yung tao sa sarili niya. It is sometimes easier to save people from other people than to save them from themselves. We can become our worst enemies, especially when we are in a state of delusion or paranoia, especially when we are so convinced that we are right, especially when we're not capable anymore to listen to the truth. Especially when people have made up their minds that what they think is true and everybody else is wrong. Sa Matthew chapter 10, 26 to 28, mayroong reassuring words si Jesus, pero meron din siyang warning. Ang sabi ni Jesus, "There is nothing that is hidden that will not be revealed. There is no secret that will not be made known. What you hear in the darkness, you must speak in the light. What you hear that is being said in whispers, you must proclaim from the housetops." At ito yung kanyang warning. Huwag anyang matakot dun sa mga ang kayang saktan, yung katawan mo lang. Do not be afraid only of the physical murderers. Mas nakakatakot yung spiritual murderer. Those who can poison, intoxicate, those who can kill the human soul. And I think he's actually referring to Satan, the prince of lies, the one I call the spiritual murderer, who can only be cast out by the blood and water that flowed out from the wounded side of the crucified God of Calvary.